Everybody, so I wanted to do a quick product review on the Citadel Painting Handle. Now this product's been out for a little while, but I did notice that it sold out fairly quickly, at least locally to me, and it seemed to be really popular, and I wasn't really able to get my hands on it, and was sort of out of stock for a while. And now they've come in again, and I've actually ended up purchasing a couple of them. And so this is something that I guess a type of product that I've been interested in for a while. There have been other ones sold in the past for quite a bit more money, and may have a bit more configuration, but require quite a bit of setup time between each individual miniature as compared to these, in my opinion. And so one of the things that really stood out for me when I first saw this product in person is the size. If I show this image from Games Workshop up here on the right, granted, the handle itself is in the foreground as compared to the box, but given just the size of it in the picture and the way they've placed it in, to the box, I just thought it was a little bit bigger than it is. I'll show you just here in my hand. This is sort of the size that it is. It's actually perfect. I mean, I have no complaints, but I just was a little surprised that when I saw the little boxes in the store, I thought they would be a little bit bigger, but I don't think that that really has any bearing on its functionality or how well the product will be. But yeah, that was just my initial first impression. And so it does come in a box just like this here, and essentially they do give some examples on the outside that you could use it for a 25mm round base, you could use it for a 40mm round base, and then they do also show a 32mm round base. And so it doesn't say anything about square bases, and it doesn't say anything about smaller than 25mm or greater. And so I thought I'd take a look at that today, in addition to just sort of showing the product. In Canada, these were $10, which I think initially, without having seen the product, that's an amazing price point for a Citadel kind of product. Considering Citadel pots of paint alone can run anywhere from $3.50 to $5 in Canada, you're talking about, for the price of 2 pots of paint, potentially a tool that you'll be able to use for an inordinate amount of time. And so that is very interesting. And so price point, I think so far sounds really, really good to me. Now, the product itself has an interesting configuration on it. There's essentially a spring mechanism here, so it is actually pretty strong, so you don't have to worry about likely things falling out easily. Perhaps over time, it remains to be seen as to whether it weakens at all, but one of the things that is quite interesting is just this configuration. When you first look at it, it's not really intuitive, maybe how you would use all of it. There's clearly a lip in the bottom here, a circular lip, to be able to put round bases in. And one of the things I have seen in some reviews is that if you're not careful, I think one of the things you have to be most careful about is just when you place it in, because it is a strong spring mechanism. You don't want to let it go, obviously, before it's secured on both sides, because then you could end up having a bit of a slingshot, miniature slingshot, rather than a painting handle. Now, there's also this top piece, which has a really weird sort of configuration in my mind, and this part here, this sort of square piece that's kind of small in the interior, but clearly there's these side pieces on the top that you could conceivably put something square in to hold. That's a little bit bigger. It affords you just this sort of, I'll use a pointer here, just a white pencil here. It affords you this distance here on each side, a little bit more than the bottom. So, interesting point here is that this handle comes into 2 main parts. Now, they don't tell you anything about this, so I just kind of did this myself, but this piece here, this is a really nice connection piece. Whether or not there's any use to do this, this is the exact size of a standard tripod connection. And so you could conceivably put anything on this handle, or this piece that holds miniatures on anything that accepts this connection. So I can imagine that there probably are uses for that for folks. Doesn't come to mind initially, but you're still talking about a $10 product here, and it's not only giving you this function on the top, but it has that standard tripod connection, which I think is pretty cool, actually, for me to when I discovered that. And so now you'll notice there's these 3 metal pieces here. I believe that these 2 pegs on the outside just hold this mechanism together. This on this side, these pieces of plastic, but then this middle one here clearly goes through a center piece where there's that spring mechanism on the inside. So it feels very well constructed. When I let it go, it has a fair bit of power to it. So without further ado, I just want to show a selection of miniatures that are in various stages of progress of painting, from unpainted to painted by somebody else that I need to strip, to completely painted, to in the process of being painted. But I'm just going to show a selection of bases. And so starting with my goblin here, I have a square base, which is not shown on the outside as to whether it would actually work. And the question is the choice of where to put these things. Now, this square 20mm base doesn't fit in this slot here, but if you were to put it on the top, it is held, but it's held sort of just on these corners, like just on the corners themselves. I'm not sure that I'd feel as comfortable with that. I'd probably want to go to the bottom, and it is smaller anyway, and it's held on the corners, but there's a bit more space on each side. And it does fit it. It does hold on to it. There's a little bit more clearance to the inside of the corners of the base. So you could use it for smaller square bases despite it not being on the outside, and showing that. Now, one of the things that I noticed when looking at this too is I noticed some people talking about getting many multiples of them, and I think that that's completely fine. It's an affordable product. The only reason for me to probably do that is if there was a lot of time in between going from one model to the next. But I think, as you might see here, is that as long as you just are pretty careful in the way you hold this, it actually doesn't take any time at all, like to go from one model to the next. Now, this clearly, this piece on the bottom here is clearly made for the 25mm, this clearance. It fits it really well. Having said that, I don't have the 30mm base to show for this review. It looks like the intention is that the 30mm would also go on the bottom. So this does have a lot more clearance to go further, and so it looks like the 30mm would also go in that bottom square based on the picture. Now, I also have a 25mm square, and I'm guessing that that would fit pretty snugly in the bottom, and perhaps the top as well. Yeah, and there's even more clearance here. Give a slight tug. I'm not pulling hard, but it doesn't come out like easily. It's an interesting piece here. If you have longer bases that are still quite thin, you could conceivably put this in here similar to a 25mm model. And so I have this on the still on the bottom, not the top. And so you can use it for things that are sort of oddly shaped but still have a point that meets the specifications of the width. Now here I have a 40mm circular model. And I have noticed that despite it being really grippy, that it does get caught a little bit at times. Like right now it's not caught, but you do have to kind of push it slightly if you wanted to go completely closed. I don't know if that matters to you, but at the end of the spring mechanism there is a little bit of a hang up here. Now for this 30mm, or 40mm, excuse me, I believe I have to go on the top on this one to get this in. And this one you are definitely pulling a little harder on this to get it to fit, because I think at its greatest point the resistance on the magnet is definitely more. And so like I'm having honestly, I haven't used this thing a lot, but I'm having a little bit more trouble just to do this without this going flying on live video. But there we go. Actually, pulling it back like this and just letting it set down a little bit, it slides in really nice. I probably just need a little bit of dexterity with this thing, just a little bit more repetition in using it just to get it to work well. But it fits this one nice. You definitely have to pull on it a bit harder for it to fit this 40mm round. And it seems to be pretty good. It feels like you could paint pretty comfortably with this and be able to turn it. Now lastly, I have a 40mm square. So I'm just immediately going to try the top lip on this, because it seemed like that was the only way to really get the 30mm round. And when I pull back on this, the corners on this one definitely are overlapping. There is no way to actually fit this one in. It is too big. And so 40mm round works, but 40mm square doesn't. So overall, like, my thoughts on this is that this is a really nice product. I mean, it hits really a good price point. It seems to be, I mean, it's a made in China plastic product, you know, engineered, you know, with the spring mechanism. It's manufactured in China. But as I showed, like, little things like being like the fact that this is put together on a standard tripod mount, that's really cool. Like, I didn't expect that. That's not advertised. I'm not sure that we're supposed to know that, but I think that you could potentially do other things with these two components. Even if you didn't want to use it for the intended purpose, you could do that. And you know, that's interesting to me. The spring mechanism seems to be really sturdy. It does have limitations in that, you know, you can only use it definitely for certain standard shapes and sizes. And as you get bigger on the model, I mean, it doesn't take long on a larger model to not be able to use it. Now, I do find personally that I've always just held my miniatures. I never really liked the blue tack method on paint pots and things. I know plenty of people are really successful with that. I've just always opted to just hold my miniature when painting by the base. The bigger the base, obviously, the easier it is to do that. And so I guess at this point, I'll still continue probably in the near future doing that. But definitely for the small things, where your fingers then actually kind of get in the way even more, or you're maybe having to position your hand in a way that creates more tension on your hand because of holding that size. This could be a really, really good option. Don't know that I needed more than one. I ended up purchasing two, but really for the price point, it didn't really hit me in the pocket too much to purchase a second one. Well, I give this one a positive review. I actually think this was one of the best products I've seen to come out of Citadel to assist with hobbying and painting in a while. And so, yeah, if you have any questions, please put comments below. Happy to answer how I can. And take care, everybody.